this presentation, this video on aircraft observations and reports. There's some very good reference material for this section. You can read the Aviation Weather Services, or you can read also the Aeronautical Information Manual. But also there's an online course available from AOPA. It's called Sky Spotter. And if you go out to the Air Safety Foundation online, their courses, it's free and you can take it and you learn so much by doing it. So what we're going to do now is look at two different types of aircraft observations. We're going to look at, initially we're going to start out with pilot reports, and then we'll work our way into aircraft reports. So before we do that, let's take a look at what PIREPs are good for. Why do we use PIREPs and what's so significant about them? The nice thing is that they give weather information in between reporting stations, along your actual route of flight. So it gives you, information that you wouldn't normally have from charts or other material. It gives you icing that is occurring, turbulence that's occurring, and any other remarks that pilots might give you. For example, the cloud tops and cloud bases. Remember, all these reports are voluntary, and they come out anytime. They can come out whenever a pilot feels like giving one. However, according to some of the regulations for air traffic control, they're required to solicit pilot reports when these conditions are met. When the ceiling's below 5,000 feet, when visibility is below 5 miles, when thunderstorms are forecast or they are occurring, when there's light icing or greater intensity, also when there is moderate or greater turbulence, if there is forecasted or is there occurring wind shear, and also volcanic ash. Those are when ATC will start asking for pilot reports. So if you're flying along and you're in an area where they suspect ice, they will ask if there is any. Now, aircraft traffic controllers are very busy, so this is on our lower part of their duty chain. In other words, they don't always do this, but it is in their regulations and they can do that. So air traffic control will request pilot reports when those conditions are met, but you can volunteer information anytime you want. It's great to pass on this information to other pilots so they know what's going on. Things like cloud bases, cloud tops. A lot of times when you're climbing out from an airport, air traffic control will ask just so that they can pass along the information of cloud bases and cloud tops. But also, visibility. If you see any precipitation while you're flying along, you can report that. Any restrictions to visibility, such as haze, smoke, or dust. With the G1000, you can report winds at altitude with any kind of GPS type system. They usually calculate that. And then also, it's really important for you to pass along winds aloft in icing conditions and other times also. And even if the weather is good, you can pass on that information because that is actually valuable information. So who do you give a pilot report to? Well, it depends on where you are. Whatever ATC facility you're talking to, you can pass on the information, such as flight service stations, ARTCCs, in other words, centers. If you're talking to radar approach, you can give them the pilot reports, or even the control tower when you're approaching the land or when you're taking off, or even when you're taxiing in or out. When you land, you can also pass on your pilot report to flight service stations using a telephone. So there is an experimental method for submitting pilot reports, and this is out at the Aviation Weather Center. They have a form that you can use online to submit pilot reports. Right now you have to register for it, and they're only allowing airline dispatchers and Center Weather Service unit meteorologists to input this information, as well as other ATC facilities. If you want to learn more about that, I gave you the link. You can go out there and read up on it. So what are pilot reports good for? Now, they're used for a lot of different purposes, and it depends upon where you are and who you are. For example, air traffic control towers use the information that you pass along to expedite the flow of traffic at the airport. and also to pass on hazardous weather information surrounding the airport. As I mentioned, it's nice to pass on cloud bases, cloud tops, but if you're picking up ice or turbulence, or if there's wind shear, that's really important. Pass along that information. Flight service stations use the information to brief pilots. In other words, they'll take your pilot reports and pass them on to other pilots that are going through the same area. Also, they help with in-flight advisories. Advisories are forecast of hazardous weather. And also, while you're flying along, sometimes you call up flight service station to get the weather en route. And that information can be passed along. The pilot reports that you make can be passed along to those pilots who are looking for information between two different locations. Centers are a great place for pilot reports. There's a lot of pilot reports that go back and forth, and usually these are really quick pilot reports. For example, I remember when I used to fly a jet, as soon as I got on the frequency and level off at altitude, check in with the controller, I'd say Cleveland Center, 77 November Delta, 30, flight level 330, smooth. So you tell them right away what the turbulence is, because a lot of pilots are looking for a smooth ride for their passengers and their company flights. So, it helps to pass along that information to avoid turbulence. Also, looking for the best altitudes for a ride, of course, a nice smooth ride. Also, ARTCC or centers use it to expedite the flow going across their airspace. So, in other words, they'll try and navigate aircraft around thunderstorms if you report thunderstorms, or particularly, if there's icing, you report an altitude with ice and they'll avoid that altitude. Also, the National Weather Service uses that information. They use it to amend forecasts and to verify their forecasts. Sometimes if you make a pilot report, actually many times when you make a pilot report of severe turbulence or severe icing, they'll use that in making the advisories. In other words, they'll put out a SIGMET for severe icing or severe turbulence if you report it. Also, it's used for pilot weather briefings. And then finally, computer models are constantly trying to forecast aviation weather hazards. They're trying to update those models. So if you provide information, it will help verify the forecast, and then that will help them determine if the research they're doing into computer models is helping aviation. That's all I have for you for this little PowerPoint, and there will be another video on PIREPs following this.